Welcome to Father and Son. Another week's gone by, Tom. We've got a new premier for 2010. I had my birthday on Sunday. Fans having a birthday a day after Collingwood wins a premiership. Very disappointing.
Well, yes, well it was. I mean, the grand final replay here in Melbourne, of course, perhaps surprised many people. St Kilda was so hard at the ball the previous week and forced an historic draw, and then Collingwood just ran away with it the week after. And of course, up in Sydney, the NRL grand final was looking like a very close, tight clash on Sunday afternoon, and lo and behold, the St George Illawarra Dragons just ran away with it for the second half, and it was quite a one-sided match.
Yeah, well, at least the Collingwood boys, it didn't take long to get into trouble, did they, after winning the premiership?
Yes, well, two Collingwood supporters are being investigated.
No, two players.
Sorry, two players, I should say, quite right. I think I know who they are as well, but I can't say it. Being investigated for sexual assault. It was funny because the day before the club went to great lengths to say this is the new Collingwood, and all those terrible jokes about our players and our supporters behaving badly are all things in the past, and lo and behold, look, now we don't know what's happened yet, but I think the old Collingwood is still lurking not very far under the surface.
Yeah, I think we've got to give congratulations to Eddie. He's done a marvellous job of turning that club round, Eddie Maguire, and also to the coach. I think together they've been a great pairing, and obviously they're now a very, very well-run club. A lot of people are saying that, they're such a young team, they'll win premierships, 2 or 3 on the trot. Well, if you go back to '93, the Baby Bombers beat Carlton. Everybody said they were going to do the same thing. They didn't win another one until 2000.
By which time it was largely a different team anyway.
It was. Then in Hawthorn won in 2008. Everybody said, they've got a young team, they're going to be there forever. They haven't been in a grand final since.
I think the reality about football dynasties these days is that they're less and less likely to happen. The nature of the salary cap and the draft means that it's almost impossible for any team, no matter how good they are, 2, maybe 3 years is the maximum you're going to get, as Geelong has probably discovered. And that's what it was supposed to do. I mean, much as we might not like it, you know, the whole idea of the rules in both the NRL and the AFL is to make the competition far more variable. That, you know, year in, year out, you don't really know who's going to win. You'll get a surprise. And funny enough, I think that's not a bad thing.
No, it probably isn't, except if you're a Carlton supporter. We like to be there all the time.
Yes, well, we do.
Now, today, the Reserve Bank's going to decide on interest rates soon after lunch at their meeting. I don't know why they're putting them up. I mean, everybody's presuming that they are going to go up. Don't you think it's, jumping a bit early?
Well, I do. What's unusual is that the timing of the Reserve Bank meeting, which is today, 5th of October, is ahead of the release of the September quarter inflation data. And if what we're told is true, that they don't get to see that inflation data any earlier than anybody else, I would have thought waiting to see what the numbers on inflation have to say would make more sense. I mean, if rates need to go up, you can always put them up in November. It won't hurt to wait.
Put them up in straight away, you have a special meeting.
Well, that's right. I mean, as they did during the global financial crisis, they had several special meetings to cut rates, not to put them up. The reality is, with the strong A dollar, a lot of imported goods are going to become cheaper, not more expensive. Anything. I mean, we import most of the things we all consume, apart from food. That becomes cheaper. There's no signs that the housing market is running away with itself. I would have thought having a bit of a pause and not putting Australian families under mortgage stress was a good idea. But then again, the Reserve Bank, it's almost robotic. They just sort of have this thing about raising rates, taking away the punch bowl before the party gets started. And of course, they don't have any other tools at their disposal.
No, I think it's premature, but we'll wait and see what happens this afternoon. Well, the Commonwealth Games are underway.
Are they?
Yeah.
I hadn't noticed.
Yeah, well, all the pundits said they mightn't even start, and they obviously had a lot of troubles getting the buildings and the stadiums finished. They had a bridge that fell down, and they got worries about terrorism. But they had a marvellous opening ceremony, and Australia's won 3 or 4 gold medals on the opening day.
Yeah, well, it's good. I mean, remember people said the same thing about the Athens Olympics back in 2004, and yet that was a pretty successful Olympics by all accounts. There were even ads on TV about having runners going around the athletics track while builders were still digging holes and putting things up and stuff. Look, I think, I hope the Commonwealth Games are a success. I do have reservations about their long-term future. I read yesterday that Gold Coast wants to host the 2018 Commonwealth Games now, and it will cost the state of Queensland up to and possibly more than $1 billion. I don't think you get a great return on your money. I mean, Melbourne hosted them 4 years ago. A, do we remember it? And B, do we honestly think there are any lasting benefits apart from a couple of upgraded sports stadiums?
Well, I mean, that's the benefit. You do get upgraded sports stadiums.
Well, but here's the thing, you get that, and the Gold Coast one is being justified, assuming they make the bid to say, oh, well, it'll help bring forward much needed public transport infrastructure. Well,
they should be doing that anyway.
Exactly. If they need public transport infrastructure, you shouldn't need a Commonwealth Games or indeed any other sporting event to force you to do it. You should just build it.
I imagine the state government, I don't know this for sure, but I imagine the state government get a big lump of money from the feds to help build whatever they're going to do.
Of course they do, but I mean, again, if the federal government feels that it's necessary to give state governments money, well, then they should just do that under the Commonwealth Grants Commission. I mean, maybe it's a very Australian thing to say that, we need a sporting event to cause us to do what we should otherwise be doing. I don't have so much of a problem with events that take place year in, year out, the tennis, the Grand Prix and so forth. But Commonwealth Games are a one-off. I mean, we went to the 1982 Commonwealth Games in Brisbane, and I don't think there's any great lasting benefits apart from...
Well, you saw some good boxing.
Well, we did. We saw a giant kangaroo full of school children who are probably all adults now. So.
That's right.
Anyway, I mean, I look, we probably will. I mean, Australia's bound to host them at least a few times in the next 20 or 30 years. But
well, of course, Australia gets a disproportionate opportunity because there's fewer countries in the southern hemisphere, and we do it pretty well.
Oh, look, we're fantastic. I mean, without wanting to get all sort of patriotic about it, we are good at organising those things. The Sydney Olympics proved that. I mean, everybody still says it was probably the best of the modern Olympics. Melbourne is also a good place to have these things because all the stadiums are basically built. I mean, you could throw in an Olympic or a Commonwealth Games at short notice in Melbourne. You would hardly need to build anything, such as the quality of the infrastructure. Anyway, but that's just the way it is. So we wish Australia well, but I've got to say, I think the interest level in this Commonwealth Games is low, and I don't think it's ever going to get much better.
No, it's not attracting the back page of the paper. It's at 5, 6. They're still talking about the football in Collingwood.
Well, there's that, but to give you another example, I mean, we had these road cycling championships. Now, if you're not into cycling, you might not have known about this. They were held in Geelong over the weekend. There were several Australian riders in the road cycling championships who could have gone to compete at the Commonwealth Games, but for them, the World Road Cycling Championships are more important. So
they should have gone because they didn't do much good.
Well, no, they didn't, but it just says how low down the list the Commonwealth Games ranks for in some sports.
Well, now the football's over, we turn to the Spring Racing Carnival. You should tune in now on every Friday night at 8 o'clock on Channel 31, where Big Jack Sports Wrap, we run through the racing. This week's Caulfield Guineas Day, then the 1,000 Guineas next Wednesday, and then finally the Caulfield Cup. Then we go on to the Cox Plate, and then of course you've got the big Melbourne Cup Carnival with the 150th running of the Melbourne Cup. Exciting times. That'll be over, and we'll be into Test cricket, and the Poms are coming here to fight for the Ashes. So there's plenty of excitement ahead before we get into next football.
Just one thing though, Dad, you did say last week on a more serious note that you were pro-euthanasia, and I said at the first sign of madness I'd be happy to do what was needed. Now, I noticed you started referring to yourself in the third person there as Big Jack does this and Big Jack does that. And,
it's the name of the show, Big Jack
Well,
Sports.
I know, but I'm just a bit concerned. I'll just leave it there.
All right, that's it for this week. We'll see you all next week.